Welcome to episode 8 of my series Making the Changes, in which we work on the skill of outlining chord changes with chord tones. Now, this is all about developing your fretboard knowledge alongside your ear, key foundational skills in order to improvise. Last time out we looked at rhythm, incorporating triplets into our outlines, breaking away from using eighth and quarter notes. So the kind of outline like this where the rhythm's a little bit more varied. Now, so far, all of the harmonic material, so the chord tones, they have been that, chord tones, so what we call inside sounds, so the notes of the chords themselves. So the idea of making the changes, outlining the chord changes, is that if the chord's A minor 7, you want to be able to express that on your instrument, you know. And the ways we've done that so far, you know, just with 1, 3, 5, 7, knowing that on your instrument, being able to do that in a pivot, all covered in previous episodes, little cells like... or those types of things which are expressing that sound. All of those though have been focused on the notes of the chords themselves, plus the odd other inside sound like the second or the sixth as like a passing note. All of those things are what I would describe as inside sounds, notes which belong to the chords or very closely related notes from the key. As a result, if I just improvised around those kind of things, you're going to hear the chord changes because I'm outlining the chord changes like this. 1, 2, a 1, 2, 3. You can hear the chords as I play there because I'm picking out the pertinent notes of the chords, sometimes using all of the chord, sometimes just some of it. Sometimes adding the odd second or ninth or sixth as like a passing note. But it's, as I said, all inside sounds. Now, obviously a massive aspect of jazz is dissonance and tension and release. And to get that, we're never going to get that just with the inside sounds. I'm a big believer in building things logically, and that's why I've held off on the outside sounds to now. It's just been about get used to the inside stuff. I really do think you need to learn that first before you get into the kind of more outside sounds. If you can't outline those chord changes with the ingredients of those chords, what makes you think you're going to be able to play something which makes sense with stuff outside of those things? I think anyway. So today we're going to look at, the first thing I'd look at to do that is tritones, and that is very simply a chord substitution that we apply to one chord type in this instance, and that is the dominant chord. Take the A section to Autumn Leaves that we've been using for this series, and we have two dominant chords. We have the D7 in bar 2, and then in that second line we've got that B7 leading us back to E minor. Now, I'm not going to break down all the theory behind the tritone because I've already made a series of 3 very detailed videos on that topic. And if the tritone is something new to you or something you need to brush up on, then watch those videos in order and you will have a very clear understanding of the tritone. I'll link them on the end screen plus in the description. So the tritone is a chord substitution where you replace one dominant chord with another. Now those two tritones are what's called a tritone apart, which is describing the distance, the interval between them. In very simplistic terms, the way to find it on the guitar very simply from the E string, say, if I find D on the E string at fret 10, you'll find the root of the tritone, the evil twin, 1 fret higher. I call that higher because it gets higher in pitch that way. A lot of people find that odd, but I think that's more logical. And there it is, we have an A flat. So D and A flat, you get that interesting interval occurring there. Now what this means, well, interestingly also, if I did A flat, because they're a pair, then it would give you D as the corresponding tritone. So D7 is the tritone of A flat is the tritone of D, and you could move that around up and down the E string to find your related tritones. Now, what that means is anywhere we've got D7, we could replace it with A flat 7. The B, find the note B on the guitar, its tritone is F, so we could replace that with F7. Now, when you play with tritones at first, you might find the sound a bit strange, a bit like, this doesn't quite work. And I'll tell you why, because you have to learn to use them with conviction and confidence in your lines and when you're playing your arpeggios and chords and so forth. I also think getting into your comping is a good way to get used to the sound. So if we just played the chords, instead of A minor 7, D7, G major 7, C major 7, F sharp minor 7 flat 5, B7, I'm going to play tritones. Here we go, so hope you could hear there, it did offer like A minor 7, A flat 7. There's a very nice chromatic move there that you get because it goes A flat, G, and the same F sharp, F, down to the E minor. So in the 2-5-1, it's a classic place to put a tritone, for instance, because you can then get the chromatic bass line going down, and there's kind of this push to that one chord there at the end. So I've shown you the basics of a very basic elementary way of finding a tritone, and then suggestion I make to you is, say in a 2-5-1 or in the chords, when you got D7, you could maybe try using A flat 7 instead. When you got B7, you could use F7 instead. It probably needs to resolve after for it to sound good. That's a bit subjective, but maybe worth keeping that in mind. In relation to making the changes, what I'm going to ask you to do, instead of playing A minor 7, say if I just did 1, 3, 5, 7, and then did D7, then G. Instead we're going to play A flat 7, so we go A minor 7, tritone, then G major 7. If we did that very simply with basic quarter note rhythm, we're going to replace the D7 with A flat 7, we're going to replace the B7 with F7, so both tritone subs, like this. And that's just very basic, and it is going up 1, 3, 5, 7, up 1, 3, 5, 7, so it is just like chords going up like that. So in this next one, what we're trying to do is something that's been at the heart of this series is connect to the nearest note of the next chord. Instead of going 1, 3, 5, 7 and then jumping for A flat somewhere, I'm going to go to the nearest note of the next chord. I could have gone to an A flat very closely there, but like I might go, if I go down to this note, which is a G flat, an F sharp, that's the 7th of the A flat. And then I'm going to go down the A flat 7 arpeggio. So in this next example, we're going to use the tritones, but we're going to try and connect up closely for that more kind of nice flow between the chords. And there's other things you can do with this. In those last two examples, I've just played either the arpeggio up or I played it down. Obviously very basic things to be able to do first, but you might want to do things like, well, play more than one octave. You know, playing 2 octaves of the arpeggio. We could do the cells that we did in an earlier episode. So if I took an A flat 7 and I did 1, 2, 3, 5, sound like that. If I did that for A minor, then A flat, then G, you hear that, then for C, and so on. Other than 1, 2, 3, 5, we could do 8, 7, 6, 5, that one would work too. One thing I actually quite often like to do is combine the 2 evil twins, so play D7 and A flat 7, so I might play a D7 arpeggio, then go into an A flat 7, it's like a bi-tonal arpeggio, a combination of the two. So there on the dominants I was using the 2 arpeggios together. Sometimes I do that in triads, like D triad. There I did D into A flat, D into A flat, and you get this interesting ride of 2 sounds there. Another thing, final thing, is putting the 2 of the tritone in. So if you think every dominant chord's got a 2 chord, and the 2 chord of a A flat 7 is E flat minor 7. So in kind of chords, you might go A minor 7. There, what I did is I went A minor 7, then E flat minor 7, A flat 7 to G. And it sounds quite out there, and it could do it in arpeggios. And you can hear that outside sound there. These are just a few things, and if you watch my series of videos on the tritone, there's much more of this in detail than I'm covering here, and you could get a feel for the sound of some of these kind of concepts and apply them. In this last example for today, I do that bitonal approach where you're going from the regular 5 chord to the tritone, so D7 to A flat 7 in one bar and B7 to F7 in the other dominant, like this. Realistic aims from this should be, I think, just when it comes to trying to do this skill of playing the arpeggios, the chord tones as chords change, is to just, when it's a dominant chord, play the tritone rather than the regular dominant. And that's just a very basic thing to be able to do to begin with. As I said earlier, it takes a while to get your ear attuned to the tritone. Often people find it a bit odd at first. So, like anything, when you get into outside stuff with jazz guitar, it has to be done with confidence and conviction. If it's not, it just sounds wrong. And quite often these tritones, they work because they're taking us somewhere. It's not necessarily like the tritone itself, it's about where the tritone's going. So A flat 7 leading into G major 7. You know, so like if you play it as a chord, you hear that resolve there. You know, and that's the same. So there I'm playing around with A flat 7, but I'm resolving to G at the end. And that takes getting used to it, you know, getting used to the sound of it. You've got to just know where the stuff is on the guitar, of course, first, and attune your ear to it. So go easy on yourself with this one. And there's obviously other ways we can get outside sounds. We will explore things like chromaticism towards the end of this series, and other kind of notes we can bring in for more colour. But anyway, and you've got any questions, leave them below. Don't forget the backing track is on the lowest tier of my Patreon page. It's just that A section to Autumn Leaves, because it just works very well for this kind of practice. But hope you've enjoyed the lesson. Any questions, leave them below. There'll be obviously the next instalment next month, and there's 12 episodes, so December will be the last one. So looking forward to trying to bring everything together then, and bring together a lot of different skills that you've worked on across the course of this series. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget jazz guitar lessons every Wednesday with myself, Andy. Until next time, you take care.